The thread of this concept of principles, but then the inflexible mind being a sign of a weak mind, which is a strong statement and an interesting statement. So let's go with that. Inflexibility would be a lousy principle to have. And if that's the case, then changing your mind is a valuable thing if it's warranted. So in the lightning round here, and we're going to start with whoever has the courage, so I'm giving you bonus points already by being willing to be the one to step out first, to talk about something significant that you changed your mind about.
Well, mine's pretty simple. I was thinking, and it's not related to politics or anything, and it's related to my kids. And there's a big debate in my family about the naughty step thing. And
As in go sit on the naughty
go
step?
sit on the naughty step. And I was...
Just to clarify.
Yeah. For those super nanny. Anyways, it's one of those things that I was quite opposed to. I just didn't really get it. I thought it was kind of a ridiculous thing. And I argued it and mocked it and thought it was stupid. And, come on, really? What's that guy? It's ridiculous. But then with my partner, she kept fighting me. Okay, I'll try it. And it works, it works. And so now she, of course, reminds me all the time how wrong I was, and she loves to remind me of whenever I am wrong, which is not very often. But it's one of those things that it sort of humbles you when it's about your kids, and you're sort of torn between this emotional and these rules, and so that for me, I know it's not really political, but it's kind of those small things in life where you go, okay, I'm willing to switch my opinion on this.
I think changes of minds inside family units could never be construed as not being political. So that's fair to say, I think. Okay, Sandy, what do you think? Do you have a good example of something that you changed your mind about?
Well, it's actually hard to talk about this because I actually do change my mind quite often, and it to me, there are two different kinds of things. It's, Andrea, I've heard you talk about how you like evidence, and I love evidence too, being a former lawyer. So I'm always interested to hear other points of view, and not just to hear other points of view for the sake of hearing them, but to really understand what is that person seeing that I don't see, and how are they really seeing this? And I guess I practice that as a habit. So it's hard for me to point to a single case. I do think about Occupy Vancouver a lot. There are so many different perspectives and so many interesting and intelligent people that have quite different takes. In fact, quite radically different takes on that issue, and I care about that issue enormously. So I don't really know how to say I do this all the time. It's something I try, as a matter of course, to practice, to really be open, intellectually open.
But I will take your point about point of view, which is not just listening to it for the sake of saying you listen to it, but to try and inhabit those points of view so that you can actually see what they're seeing. Okay, who's next for something they changed their mind about? Oh, Nicole's ready to go.
I have two stories. I'm trying to decide which one I should go with.
The best one.
I'll go with the one that's most directly related. When I decided to run in this election, it was a very difficult decision for me. I'm a big Cope supporter. And for me, I've seen a lot of problems in City Hall in the last while, and for me, a lot of them come from the fact that the big development companies fund the major parties, and that includes Vision Vancouver. And so when Cope decided to partner up with Vision, it was very difficult for me. And when I was asked to run in this election, that was also very difficult for me because I didn't want to, as many people suggested it might, I didn't want to split the progressive vote. And I went back and forth about this many times, and originally I said, no, I don't want to do it because, I don't want to split the progressive side, but in the end, I decided I couldn't back down on my principles, and I think that what NSV is trying to do is really important, and I changed my mind, and I decided to go with it, because I think this is a critical election year, and I'm jumping in there.
Okay, Andrea?
Yeah, well, and like Sandy, I actually struggled with this. It was one of the sheets that you guys sent, and my struggle is that I change my mind often, but not, like, it's always generative and incremental. Like, if you like data and you like evidence, then you are going to be constantly sort of, reassembling and sort of looking at things from different perspectives. And also, this issue of other people. I was, God, like 20 years ago now, in a pitched battle with another employee at the Wilderness Committee. She was screaming at me, I was screaming at her on the phone about an issue that, well, it's a long, complicated backstory, but suffice it to say, we were not agreeing on something. And she stopped and she said, remembering I was about 19 at the time or something like that, she said, Andrea, I'm going to hang up, but not in anger. I'm going to hang up and I'm going to try and understand why you feel the way you do, and I want you to commit to me that you'll do the same thing. And it's always stuck with me. After, 10 minutes, I'm like, oh my God, I totally understand now why she feels that way. And, she understood my point of view. And if you take that into things, you are going to at least shift your opinion and certainly your approach. What I would say is that we have consensus on problems a lot faster than we have consensus on solutions, right? So I think when we come to principles, it's on those problems, and then the solutions part is where it gets a little bit more wonky in the debate. So significant mind changes, I've had a few. Carbon tax, actually, I started off anti-carbon tax, which is not, probably doesn't sound that surprising, but it's probably interesting for you to know that I led the 14 environmental groups that negotiated the carbon tax with the government. So what happened in that interval was a call to action, a really deep understanding that climate change, from talking to people who understood the issue well, looking at all the evidence, that A, we couldn't sort of opt out of personal responsibility on climate change, that B, these deep values I hold around social justice and policies that didn't unduly harm people who have lower incomes are very deep and important values, but if we don't have a planet for somebody to hold those values on, it's that integrity part, right? It's an irreconcilable problem, so that it required action. And that the evidence does back the carbon tax, that pricing carbon makes a huge difference on the amount of carbon there is. So not only changed my mind, but actually went into a leadership role in it, because it didn't just happen. It was a hell of a lot of work over a long year, but the hardest part of it was getting 14 environmental groups to agree on a united position, which is what the government had to see in order for them to bring the tax forward.
Okay, thanks, Mike. Just as an example of where I changed my position in pretty short order, actually. It was an attempt by me, I think, to try and be culturally sensitive. And it was looking at an issue that had arisen in the headlines about a condo building on UBC that was being built next to a palliative care facility. And my initial reaction was to side with the residents, who were by and large mainland Chinese. And my experience of witnessing that culture was that there was a strong, deeply held feeling about luck, about demons, and about superstition. And initially, what I had it explained to me was that the facility next door was something that was sort of sprung on the people who had already bought, and they were understandably ticked off. They looked at it as something that would cause fear in their lives, and it was going to damage their own investments in that building. So I said, you know what? UBC is a big campus. Let's go move that thing place somewhere else. Then the calls rained down on me. Friends who knew what was going on out there really looked at it from a different perspective and explained to me that I was just dead wrong. And so
In a matter of a few hours, I was eating some crow and really kind of looking at that. And this is after writing, over the span of the last 3 years, probably about 1,000 articles and opinion pieces on one subject or another. Not to say that I got it right every time, but that was one I remember distinctly going, man, I've just completely got it wrong. And so we just have to kind of face up to that right away. Yeah.
That's good. That's a great story. All right, Ellen, you're the only one who,
Last candidate standing?
last candidate standing. The only one left who has the possibility of admitting that it never happened.
Well, I think the best thing I ever did in my life was do Tai Chi. And I practiced Tai Chi for 10 years, and I wish I was still actively practicing it. I do practice it emotionally and intellectually, but I think it's really important, if we're going to make the planet whole, is that we all do Tai Chi. We listen to each other, we move with the energy, we should all stand up. Actually, this is really dead. You'll be sitting. And
Sitting is evil.
it's really evil. We were at the Lakshmi temple, and there was 2 doctors there from Children's Hospital. They said the most serious disease facing anyone is not cancer, not heart disease, but it's lack of exercise. It was very interesting presentation, but that's an aside. So I was just saying that I wished we had had this forum at the beginning of the election, before we were so close to the election, because there's so much competition in an electoral race between parties and then increasingly between individuals. And of course, when I ran in 2002, elected in 2002, was COPE versus the MPA. And then in 2008, it was COPE, Vision, and the MPA. And so the MPA has always been there. And it's the party that I haven't agreed with. It's the big developers party. It's the nasty blogger from City Caucus who does these horrible nasty columns. It's all these things. And then what happened in council is my office is right next to Suzanne Anton's. And she was the only person in council from the NPA. And I watched her, and I saw she did her homework, and she was thorough, and she was prepared in council. But if she didn't have someone to second her motion, it couldn't get on the floor to be debated. And I struggled a little bit about that, and I thought, her ideas need to be on the floor and debated. So I started seconding her ideas, her motions, so they could be on the floor and could be discussed. And that was difficult for me to do. That was really, because I knew that I didn't have to second them, and probably nobody else would. And then she would be silenced, and NPA would be silenced. And
Ellen, if you second a motion, do you then have to vote for it?
No, it just gets it on the table for discussion, and then I can vote against it if I want.
I have seconded a lot of her motions too, as have others, for the record.
Yeah, in the beginning though, I was, if you look at most of the motions, it was like, anyways, it doesn't matter. But that was like me struggling with respecting somebody whose political ideas I often didn't agree with, but I thought she did her homework, she had a different point of view, and sometimes she flip-flopped, but it was worth supporting her and supporting a woman who was in a very isolated position and deserved to be heard and have her ideas discussed, and we would vote them down, or they would be referred for the community to discuss, whatever. But that was an important decision I made.
Okay, thanks. That's actually touching on an issue that I wish we had more time to talk about, which is the issue of collaborative and competitive kind of presentation on council. Can we be indulged for maybe 1.5 minutes? Okay, this has to be a real lightning round. Now, the last one wasn't all that lightning-ish, and I could have jumped all over it, but truthfully, the answers were all really interesting and valuable and worth listening to. So sometimes being really fast is not the best way to handle it. But on this one, a fairly simple, straightforward answer, kind of your core feeling on this, which is there's a quote that goes something to the effect that competition results in the development of the best products, but that it brings out the worst from people. And I'm not saying whether that's maybe true or not, but I just use it to preface the question about what do you think the benefit of competition is on council, if there is one? So quickly down the line, you don't have to admit that there is one if you don't believe there is one, But if you do believe there is one, then we're interested to hear what it might be. So we're just going to go linear here from one end to the other.
Okay, well, I will disclose I'm a jock and a soccer player, love competition, won't do yoga because you can't win at it, but
I've seen people try.
I hear it exists, I've never come across it, but I do believe in a representative democracy. It is about collaboration, majority rules, but with respect for minority rights, and your goal is always to figure out how to empower everybody's voice in it. So I trying to find something valuable about competition in that setting, and I can't.
It's okay.
I'm sorry.
I don't want to force you into it. That's,
I go back to my years ago as a trial lawyer where we were in court every day, every day, and in competition constantly. And I must say, there are very few people I admire as much as I do defense counsel, strong criminal defense counsel. They're not a very loved tribe, but one of the things that they do is test the soundness of a theory or of the evidence, and that is, I think, the highest purpose that the competition can be put to. You don't really know that you've got the best answer, the best solution, the right response until it's been thoroughly tested, and that's what I see as the good role of competition.
I asked a question earlier to our experts about the difference between the campaign and being in government, and I think obviously a campaign is all about competition. It's all about winning. But once you're in power, I feel that the competition shouldn't be amongst each other. It's we represent Vancouver, and I'm very competitive, and so I always think, so when I'm in, it's Vancouver. We have to make this, we have to win whatever it is for all of Vancouverites. So either it's the best city or it's whatever to me it is a kind of a competition. And I think, most politicians, of course, we're proud of our city. And even though I was born in North Van and grew up in Langley, now I'm a Vancouverite, and Vancouver is like the #1 priority for me. So absolutely, I'm going to be kicking ass and being competitive in whatever it is that I'm representing the people of Vancouver. So, that's how I see my competition once I'm in council.
and there will be a naughty step, right?
Absolutely.
Just think we should put that on the table.
My lightning round answer to this question is, I just think of a quote from, which I always don't get terribly right, from Winston Churchill, when he says that, effectively he says, in war you must be ruthless, but in victory you must be magnanimous. And so really I think it's really about balancing those kinds of emotions. You can't govern by, walking all over your colleagues and the people that you serve. So you have to have that generosity, you have to have that listening, and that's my short answer. By the way, I just, as a general comment here today, we're having an intellectual discussion about politics, which in a way is kind of anathema, because it's really, politics is about emotion. And I'd love to have a conversation about that another time. And I think that people vote, I've heard that people vote with their hearts over their heads, generally speaking. And the example of Ignatieff that David Eby gave it earlier was a great one, because Ignatieff had all the goods, but he just didn't connect with voters on that emotional level, and that's part of where he fell down. And I think it pervades all of our politics here. And it also explains why our voter turnout is going down. It's not the intellectual reasons, it's the people are not connecting. They're not feeling that emotional connection with our political world.
I would offer that, having been through this experience before, that when you have this kind of intellectual discussion about politics, that I think that, well, they'll be the judge, but I think that people connect quite strongly, actually, with people emotionally while they're having this intellectual discussion, too. Perhaps it's the problem that there aren't many opportunities.
Depends on how people make you feel.
Yeah, good point, though.
I'm going to try to be lightning. I mostly agree with Andrea that the role of council is really to collaborate and work together to come up with the best solutions. But I also agree with Sandy that we need to have debate. We need all sides of the issues to be presented, and I don't necessarily think that needs to be in a competitive kind of way, but it does need to be in a debate kind of way. All the issues need to be shown for what they are, good side and bad, so that we can make the best decisions.
And obviously, Alan, you sort of started this off by making the comment about seconding somebody else's motion that you're probably not going to agree with, but because you felt that it was important to get the thing out there. So I'm guessing you're going to say that competition is good in that way.
I think the collaboration is extremely important, and you know, I'm very much mentoring RJ Aquino, who's running for council, and mentoring young people that I'd like to see running in the next election. So when you're on the council floor, you're fighting like crazy to get your ideas out there. So it's very competitive once you're on the floor. But if that's all the public sees, then we're going to have low voter turnout. We're going to have not very many people wanting to run for elected office, because it's not an atmosphere in which they feel like they can collaboratively get their ideas out and figure out where to go with them. And that's a problem we've got with governance right now, is people see it as a negative competitive format that is not maybe where they're going to go if they want to envision a new world.
Okay, thanks very much. Well, I think we've gone over. I'm very sorry. I did ask permission and then stretched it out further, but I want to personally thank everybody for the participation tonight. This is kind of difficult to do. You're sitting up here all exposed, not even a table between you and all these people. And then also thank you to the people who supplied questions. I tried to work in a couple of the themes, but it could be difficult. As you can see, we could go on for a long, long time talking about many of these issues. But I think as much as we saw a little bit of the competition, we saw a lot of collaboration here tonight too, and a lot of feeding off each other's ideas, which I think is spectacular, and I very much appreciated the experience. So thank you to all the candidates.
We'll keep this quick because we know everybody has places to go, but we wanted to pass along a few thank yous in addition to our candidates for coming up here and being so honest and open and sharing with all of us, which I know I really appreciated. We also wanted to thank our volunteers. There was a team of about 15 people who all worked together to make this event happen, and we certainly couldn't have done it without each and every one of those people. So thank you. I think it's actually a really interesting story of crowdsourcing, and that this kind of unusual group of people came together to create this event for the election. So thank you. Thank you again to our sponsors, CH2M Hill and Urban Systems, for their financial support of this event. And thank you to our speakers who came and opened up tonight with some really interesting conversation. The final note, I know I mentioned it before, but if you did appreciate what this event was able to offer you, we would value your financial contribution to the cost of the event. We're still a few $100s short. So if you are able to contribute on your way out, we would greatly appreciate that. And I'll pass it to Jody for some last words of reflection.
Thanks, Josh. I just want to echo the thanks both to the candidates for their really eloquent and reflective responses, and also to Greg for his excellent moderation. I'm wondering if we could get Greg to go to Parliament Hill and moderate question period. I think that would be really refreshing.
Answer period.
So again, I want to thank you guys for coming out tonight, and if you're interested in participating in some more DeLiberate events, then you can check out our website. It's wedeliberate.org, and you can join the mailing list to find out what's coming up. I think that's about it. I hope we've given you some interesting things to think about and a different look at the candidates for when you go to mark your ballots on November 19th. And have a fantastic evening.